We begin this story with the origin of its antagonist, whom we'll call Kronos. This boy remembered how he lost his life over a year ago and left a message for his parents. In this story, some are chosen to have a second chance after death. Kronos woke up in a fantasy world. At first, it was hard for him to accept he had died and was separated from his family. However, he was sent here with a purpose. We'll call this lady Odysseia, and Kronos tells us how he adapted to this new world, becoming the sword knight who protected these lands. He, as the vanguard of his squad, learned a lot from them, things he never felt on Earth, like camaraderie or loyalty. The boy knew he was becoming more powerful. Also, he could return to Earth and his family. Unfortunately, it wasn't all happiness here. He lost valuable comrades and understood the importance of unity and regret. This was all part of his development as the Sword Knight. Now he was here, ready for his final battle. Someone arrives and tells Kronos to get ready. The Demon King would soon awaken. The boy stands up, for this is his duty. His squad supported him at all times. We'll call them Zoro, Cantor, Luna, and Odysseia. In this story, those who defeat the Demon King can return to Earth. That's why Kronos was here. The capital's bells rang in celebration. The heroes were returning after succeeding in their mission. There was music and celebration everywhere. It was well-deserved as their world was now safe. Still, for some reason, Kronos didn't look very happy. Odysseia tried to cheer him up. Tomorrow, he could return to his world, but Kronos felt sad because while he'd see his family again, he was also sad because he was leaving his squad behind. Odysseia asks everyone to pray for their hero. Since Kronos saved them, the least they can do is pray for the boy to have a long and beautiful life from now on. 3 weeks passed, and the boy was back on Earth. But in a cruel twist of fate, Kronos' life began to crumble. He saved Odysseia's world, but he couldn't save himself. When he returned, the first thing he did was go to his parents' apartment, but they weren't there. The reason? Kronos' mother had passed away in an accident while handing out flyers looking for her son. Then he learned his father had taken his own life, unable to live with the guilt of not protecting his family. It was news that shook the capital and became a well-known case. The boy tries to return to school, but the administrator wasn't very kind, blaming the boy for being miserable for disappearing without telling his parents. His so-called friends cast him aside. He was becoming completely alone. The little family he had left blamed him for what happened to his parents. He was completely despised for something that wasn't his fault. He was left with no money, no family, and no status. There was no more me, Kronos said. Then, he began to compare what he did with what was done to him. He knew he saved so many people that this felt like a nightmare. He risked his life to save many people, but that doesn't matter now. He needed to leave this world. There was nothing left to live for. A large man bumped into the boy. He and his girlfriend mocked him. He looked weak and miserable, so they found it funny. Kronos asks them why they were so happy. Can someone really be happy through someone else's misfortune? The big guy doesn't understand, but he's about to hit the boy. However, Kronos had now found his purpose. He can't be happy through the misery of others, but he can make everyone else feel misery. The big man grabs the boy by the hair, not wanting to hear any more nonsense. And then, the boy begins his mission. He declares it's unfair that only he has to live with the pain of losing everything. The world needed a hero who embraced human nature. And so, he concludes his mission where everyone will feel miserable. Kronos thought he would be rewarded. The Knight of the Sword increased his energy and literally wiped out everyone's lives in an instant. This would be his selfish mission, to show people the darkest side of life. Loneliness, that was Kronos' first attack, where he basically devastated half the city. Now, 3 weeks have passed since the attacks began, and it's time to meet the boy who will fight to stop the Knight of the Sword. Everyone was doing their best to flee Korea, and that's where we find Jade with his family. The boy remembers the day he lost his entire family. This was his sister Lila, and she was worried because she hadn't seen her father in several days. Jade remembers his father's messages and tried to calm her down. There was no reason to worry. A police officer blocked the road and asked them to get out and continue on foot in an orderly way. The people had no choice but to get out of their vehicles and obey. Emma, the mother, tells Jade not to get separated from his sister. If they get lost, it will be very hard to find each other again. He warned that the sword hero, Kronos, was approaching fast, and in an instant, a tank fell on top of the officer. Right now, Korea as a country was being plunged into fear. People began to run. They knew very well that Kronos was nearby. Jade picked up his sister. He needs to keep running before Kronos catches them, but unfortunately, the monster was already here. He had left a trail of chaos and destruction, and he wonders how it's possible that they can still keep fighting. It's disgusting that they keep trying to escape when he has already decided their fate. He wouldn't let anyone escape, or at least escape with any hope of survival. Jade was in that same area and was running as fast as he could. However, a man bumped into him from the side, causing Lila to drop her teddy bear. The girl cried out to her brother to go back for the plushie. She couldn't leave it behind. The boy didn't want to go back, but he remembers it was a gift from his father to his sister. So he has her sit down right there. He tells her to watch where their mother and grandmother are going, because they need to catch up. Then he tries to push back through the crowd. The plushie was under a vehicle, and just then, Kronos caught up to them. Without saying a word, he readied his sword, shouting that just like him, everyone should feel the same sadness. The man launched a blast of energy while Jade was on the ground. In a single devastating attack, everyone was struck down. The destruction in the surrounding area was terrifying. Jade stood up, but he couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was a horrific scene. Everyone had been wiped out, including his mother and sister. Sadly, his family was buried under the rubble. The boy grows desperate, thinking he can still save them, but it's impossible. They were cruelly taken from him, and just then, Kronos appeared behind him. He looked into Jade's eyes, which were full of despair, and he seemed satisfied. The boy is confused, still reeling from the loss of his family. Kronos says the boy looks like someone who has lost everything. Just like him, he has the look of someone who has lost all hope. Jade picked up an iron bar and stood up to attack with all his strength the one responsible for his misery. However, Kronos brushed him off with ease. He tells Jade that no one has ever had the strength to even make him flinch, so he finishes him off. That day, the boy thought about how he had lost everything, how he was unable to protect his sister, parents, and grandmother. That day, he lost his life. But just like Kronos, Jade was given a second chance. He became the Spear Knight. Now that we know the main context of Kronos and Jade's story, let's head to the present, where Korea has been almost completely destroyed. Kronos was obviously the one most to blame, however. On his path of revenge, he found other heroes like him. Heroes from all over Korea who began to follow him and take whatever they wanted. In total, there are 10 evil heroes who divided Korea into 9 territories. Kronos was the one who didn't take a specific territory for himself. Now, we go to Golem Island, a place that was constantly watched by the Stone Mage. Some people managed to escape death, but life has become a nightmare. This girl, whom we'll call Taya, was complaining about this life. She tells her friend that it would be better to leave this world than to keep living like this. The little girl was sad to hear Taya say that. She mentions that they both fled to this island just to find some peace. But Taya was pessimistic, unable to see any silver lining in this horrible situation. A loud thud rang out. It was a stone sentinel waking them up early so the people could go to work. This is how they lived, practically enslaved by the Stone Mage. Everyone was gathered here as the Stone Mage made his entrance. This man is the owner of the island and the master of all these people. We'll call him Gomo. He had absolute control over stone and earth, which he used to create anything he could imagine. Gomo tried to keep their spirits up by basically forcing the women to gather food, while the men built whatever he ordered. Even so, he was annoyed by the expressions on their faces, as they all looked like they didn't want to do anything. He reminds them that he is one of the most benevolent heroes. Other people have been turned into bloodbags, lab rats, or even religious fanatics. Compared to the worst places, they had it pretty good here. Of course, he noticed the people didn't care, so he decided to be a bit more cruel. Gomo claimed that being kind just doesn't work on people. The people knew what that hand gesture meant and began to run, trying to save themselves. Gomo's power was terrifying, especially when you're just a normal human. His hands released a powerful blast of wind that, as if it were nothing, pierced right through people's chests. Taya watched as the girl she had just met collapsed. She covered the girl's eyes and prayed for her to rest in peace. There was nothing good to see. She hated her bad luck. Once again, she was the only survivor. That was how Gomo treated his people. Evening arrived, and those who survived had to get to work. The women, for the most part, only had to handle the fields and food. An old woman tossed what she had gathered into Taya's basket. The grandmother felt sad seeing such a young girl so depressed, so she convinced her to go take a walk. With those oranges, Taya had met her quota, and the old woman had time to gather more. Taya thanked the old woman, who told her to be careful of the sentinel. That eye in the sky sees absolutely everything. The girl agreed and went for a walk to try and relieve some stress. Whenever she felt like she couldn't take it anymore, she liked coming to the ocean. But this time, even though it seemed like nothing affected her, the girl cried for everything she had lost, especially because she hadn't been able to do anything to stop it. She felt useless, existing only to watch her loved ones die. However, a stranger suddenly appeared. He was a soldier, and he asked the girl if she had anything to eat. A little while passed. The soldier enjoyed the little food Taya was able to give him. He asked her to please bring more food, explaining that he had comrades and a ship full of weapons. But his comrades were exhausted and needed food to be able to fight. At first, Taya said that was impossible. The man promised that his comrades would fight with all their might. Once they took back the island, the people could finally rest. Taya looked up at the sentinel. The rock watched everything like a clock. If she hurried, she could do it without being caught. She told the soldier she would do everything she could to get them food and begged him to take the island back for the people. Taya began running back toward the shelter, thinking about herself and why she supposedly wanted to die. The truth was, she just didn't want to live in chains every day of her life, and she couldn't live like this anymore. Even if it was for the last time she wanted to fully rebel. However, when she arrived, she lost all hope. Gomo was right there waiting for her, as he had obviously discovered her plan. He had captured the soldiers who were waiting for her, and a sentinel appeared behind Taya, grabbing her with great force. The girl screams, wondering how this was possible, as the stone eye wasn't even looking their way. Gomo tells her she was far too naive. He removed the invisibility from all of his stone eyes, revealing a sea of sentinels in the sky. Gomo was watching every inch of the island, just playing with them like they were lab rats. Tella was furious, but Gomo reminds her that to defeat him, Primera must become a hero, otherwise it's all for nothing. Tella cries out for anyone to help her, saying she can't fight anymore, and then, as if it were a divine sign from the sky, a powerful destructive bolt of lightning strikes down. Jade has returned. It's been more than a year since he was defeated, and he's finally back on Earth. Gomo has no idea who this hero is, while Tella thinks it's a miracle. The point is, Jade has returned as the spear hero and is now assessing the situation. He sees the fallen soldiers trapped by Gomo, so he asks the girl to explain what's going on. She isn't sure what to say, but Gomo demands to know why he's intruded on his territory. Tella realizes Jade isn't part of Kronos' group, and even Gomo doesn't know who this hero is. This is her chance. She shouts to Jade that Gomo is a monster who has enslaved everyone on the island. Gomo tells her to shut up, as he hadn't given her permission to speak. Jade understands the gravity of the situation and wants to ask Gomo something. If he really is part of Kronos' group, Jade will take him out right here. Gomo says it doesn't matter, as he was planning to eliminate Jade anyway. Jade gets ready, refusing to let his guard down for a second. A massive horde of hands appears in the sky, while the Sentinels attack from behind with everything they've got to destroy him. Jade isn't intimidated, he has complete confidence in himself. With a simple move, he destroys the approaching stones and strikes back with all his power at maximum capacity. Gomo is shocked, he can't believe anyone could have such offensive strength. With great ease, Gomo is severely injured. The man can't believe it, he's been rendered helpless before Jade. We'll call Jade Spear from now on and refer to Kronos as Sword to make it easier to talk about the main knights. The point is, Jade now has Gomo right where he wants him, and Tella is completely stunned. She can't believe her eyes. This hero quickly overpowered Gomo, the man who once destroyed all the island's defenses. Now, Jade wants to know his connection to Kronos. Gomo screams that he knows nothing about the sword, so Jade takes one of his legs. Jade warns him that every time he says, "I don't know," he'll lose another part of his body. He wants to know where Kronos is. The redhead thinks Jade is completely insane. The young hero tells him this is his last chance. Gomo finally shouts that it doesn't matter anymore and tells Jade to just destroy him. Spear assures him that if he answers the questions, he'll have a peaceful death. But Gomo wasn't talking to Jade. All the golems begin falling from the sky at high speed, also heading toward Tella, causing massive destruction on the beach. Gomo barely manages to save himself. He was quite clever with his rocks. The man remembers his past. Knowing his time is short, he recalls how he first arrived in the world where he gained his powers. When he returned home, he wanted to hug his father, but he was only met with hatred from the people he loved most. Not even in school or anywhere else was he welcome. He tried to find work, but it was all in vain. People took advantage of him because he was a minor. This was his world, the world they showed him. But despite everything, Jade managed to protect Tella. Both were unharmed. Jade tells Gomo there's no escaping his fate, as all evil beings in this world deserve to die. Gomo summons all his troops again, creating a giant ball of golems. Spear uses the electrical energy gathered in his arm. He's able to imbue his weapons with electricity and enhance his strikes with various elements. The point is, he pierces right through Gomo's defenses, which he had built so easily. The man has been completely eliminated. After more than a year of terror and tragedy, finally, a member of Olympus, which is what we'll call Kronos' group, was eliminated. Jade has achieved his goal, or at least the first step. At the same time, in the world where Gomo was seen as a savior, the people were building a statue in his name, praying that their hero would have a long and prosperous life. With Gomo's death, all the stone golems crumble. It was the first time in a long while that this island had found peace. Finally, the people were celebrating a bit of freedom. Jade watched them all from a distance. He saw how happy these families were. It was impossible for him not to remember the family he once had. He has changed so much since he left this world, but he obviously feels a sense of envy. Taya appears, hiding among the bushes. She tells Jade that everyone wants to see the hero who set them free. Lanza is convinced he hasn't done anything to be proud of. Besides, he might frighten the people, and he isn't interested in being praised. Taya knows Jade is different. Only someone human can understand the feelings of other human beings. Lanza says it doesn't matter. Either way, they wouldn't see each other again. Taya asks Jade if his plan is to eliminate all the heroes in Korea. Jade confirms it. He plans to take them all out, and Kronos is his main target. The girl says that if that's the case, she wants to help him and support his revenge. The boy thinks Taya is crazy. She understands she'll likely die. However, Korea has changed too much. Lanza has no idea where Kronos might be. She saw everything when she was forced to move around. She knows which areas are controlled by the different heroes. Plus, for the journey, they need shelter and food. She can communicate with the people. She can act as a secretary to deal with the warriors they find along the way. Jade has a question for the girl. Why does she want to risk her life? If she stays here, she might be able to live in peace. It will be hard, but there won't be anyone to mistreat them. She pulls out a photo of her family, remembering the hatred she has for the heroes. For her, there is no place at peace. She wants revenge, but since she has no power, all she can do is accompany and support him. That was her reason for living. The narrator says that while everyone celebrated their freedom, those who gave them that freedom were about to head to the battlefield. Jade tells her it's fine, she can follow him, and so the two of them begin their journey. Before leaving the island, they needed to restock. Lanza sharpened his spear. The girl listed the heroes who were closest. Jade says it doesn't matter. Whoever is closest must die first. The girl says she expected as much. The hero closest is in the shallow waters between the island and Korea. It's a pair, a girl and her giant monster, who took control of all the Korean coasts. She's known as the Sea Dragon Hero and was responsible for destroying all of the nation's naval defenses. She watched as the ships carrying her friends and family were destroyed by that hero. Jade says that doesn't matter, now they need a plan. That hero must die, but it will be difficult in the water. Taya says she thinks she knows how to get a ship and some military support. There were sailors taking refuge on the island. With Gomo's death, some warships must have been recovered. This was the fleet that would accompany them. The captain welcomes Jade and says everything will be in the name of his friends. They will ensure Lanza can fight the sea hero up close. And now, we move to the coastal waters in southern Korea. Giant whirlpools were rising. This was where the hero was. The monster, which we'll call Levi, was waking up. It immediately felt the protagonist's power. Nasa calmed it down. She was secure in the confidence she has in her power. Now the narrator shows us the feelings of the captain and his crew. Some, like Luso, hesitated to give their lives just to give this new hero a chance. Even if he eliminated Gomo, they didn't know if he'd be a long-term friend. Maybe he's just a new Kronos. For Luso, the best thing was to eliminate him and return to land to try and destroy Kronos. He sees no point in returning to the ocean. After all, that's where they lost everything. He doesn't feel like it'll be any different if he returns. The captain doesn't know Jade's intentions toward the people, but if he took out Gomo, he's an enemy of Kronos, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That small glimmer of hope is all he has left. Over 30 soldiers have died whom he loved like his own children. If he meets them in the afterlife, he needs to tell them that their sacrifices weren't in vain. He hopes that Jade is stronger than Kronos. If that's the case, there's hope for liberating this nation. Eventually, they moved into shallower waters, and the ship traveled several kilometers before reaching Nasa. Meanwhile, Jade and Taya were mapping out their plan. She tried to explain what kind of monsters he would encounter. She found this pair to be a bit ridiculous, but she wouldn't take any chances with them. Taya warns him not to underestimate them as they are very dangerous. She explains that Nasa is the brains and Levi is the brawn of the duo. Jade wants to know about their attack patterns, and if there's anything else he should know. She says that based on what she's heard and found out, the dragon breathes fire to sink ships while NASA creates a shield. Jade notes that they complement each other well, making it difficult to handle both at sea. Suddenly, the warning alarms started blaring. Both of them rushed out to see what was happening. All the soldiers were heading to their positions. Jade asks, "What's going on?" He responds that the monster likely knows they're here and is heading their way. Our protagonist goes to the front of the ship, ready to face whatever comes. The Marines prepared themselves, starting their attack against the enemy. However, for no apparent reason, fish began floating on the surface of the water. These fish were the cause of the alarms. Taya says this isn't a monster. They think it was a false alarm, but Jade tells her to get ready. The real problem was right in front of them. A giant whirlpool began to form, and from within it emerged the monster. Levi. Nasa was on top of him, and she already knew Jade was the one who took out Gomo. Now Levi wants to destroy the ship with his fire breath. The captain orders them to dodge the attack, but Jade shouts for them to drop the anchor, as he needs the ship to be stable. They are both caught off guard by that order. Even so, the captain orders the anchor to be dropped. Even if it seems pointless, there's no use dodging the attack if Jade couldn't use his power. So they had to stay firmly anchored to the bottom and trust the protagonist with their lives. The anchor is immediately dropped to the bottom of the ocean as Levi launches his devastating attack on the ship. The boy used his power to summon another weapon. From the sky descended a shield-like spear, which he grabs and activates his power to use properly. The spear is capable of creating an energy shield that covered the entire front, and the two energies collided with a devastating impact, causing a massive explosion. Jade's energy was incredible, and it was on par with NASA's. Luz just watched, knowing this hero could be more dangerous than any he'd seen, but it's very difficult for Jade to fight while protecting them. He shouts to the captain to continue the plan they established. The captain ordered his entire crew to prepare the weapons, get to their stations, and fire at full power. The ship began its attack at maximum power. It looked like Levi would be hit by the monsters, but NASA was ready for anything. She summoned a massive shield of Atlas and protected the monster from all the attacks. The captain and the pilot watched as NASA blocked the projectiles. However, he knows it's working. NASA and Levi share their energy. Jade must understand this now, and he ordered the heavy artillery attack to continue at full power. While the boy defended the ship, he felt the support of the people. The attack's power decreased when NASA activated her shield. They share energy. If he holds out long enough and withstands this power, he might drain them. So he applies more force and more power to his spear. He doesn't want to stay here forever. NASA knows Jade is dangerous. She assumes he understands how she shares energy with the monster. So she threw her trident into the air, certain it didn't matter. She would destroy the crew to deactivate the shield. Taking a stance, she filled her trident with energy and threw it at full power. The trident was nearly indestructible, with no way to stop it. She can control it however she wants, as her goal was to take out the ship's crew and their weapons. The trident began destroying the heavy turrets, including the soldiers, of course. This weapon was terrifying, destroying everything in its path with nothing to stop it. In an instant, the captain was also taken out. NASA didn't plan on stopping. She was going to take the chance to hurt Jade from behind. However, before she could reach him, someone stepped in to protect him. It was Luso, who gave his life to protect the protagonist. The trident's energy didn't hit the boy, so he asked Jade to make good use of this weapon. He gave his life to get it for him. Jade knows this isn't over yet, so he'll do whatever it takes to destroy her. He activates his elemental power and uses glaciation, an energy compatible with the enemy he's facing. Now the author wants to show us NASA's origin, but I'll keep this part brief. It doesn't add much to the main story. Years ago, NASA was sent to a sort of Atlantis. There she found a different kingdom with its own culture in crisis. This was Levi in his Atlantean form, and he was always the Prince of Atlantis. At first, he was the one in charge of guiding NASA so she could become the goddess of the ocean and defeat the demon king of this world. So, from the very beginning, Levi was always by her side to support her. That was the start of their story. Now back to the present. Jade is ready to launch his attack. NASA couldn't stand seeing someone else holding her trident. The protagonist shouted that he'd be happy to give it back. Jade begins to deactivate his shield. He pushes it forward with great force, completely destroying the shield. And before the fire could reach him, he threw the energy-infused trident with all his might. The weapon shot forward with incredible force and power. It destroyed the blue fire, and it was a deadly attack for NASA. So she asks Levi to stop attacking now. They need to maximize their defenses. The monster stopped firing, and the girl began gathering energy to summon a massive shield called the Great Shield of Atlas. The girl was confident, not even the demon king of her world could break this barrier. The trident collided with the first layer, and although it seemed to struggle, it easily destroyed the first defense, then the second, third, and fourth. NASA can't believe what's happening. Even so, fortunately for her, the fifth and final layer was able to stop the trident. She thought she had managed to escape this, but when she looks at the ship, she notices that Jade isn't there. The trident was thrown with lightning and ice energy, creating an ice bridge for her to get close to the monster. She knows this is dangerous, as she understands NASA is lethal at close range. Our protagonist uses his cataclysmic spear, and with a single devastating strike, splits Levi in two with ease. The attack was completely overwhelming, and NASA couldn't believe what she was feeling. Before passing away, she simply tells Levi that she would never stop loving him. Now, let's head to the country's capital. Kronos was sitting in the middle of the destroyed city when someone arrived to give him a report. This man is another hero, and we'll call him Felon. Felon reports that two heroes have fallen, Gomo and NASA, along with her dragon. These are the images they managed to get via satellite. It's the spear hero. This means that the people now have a new sense of hope. Felon says this is bad news. The eternal sorrow Lord Kronos spread is starting to fade away. Kronos tells Felon to find him. No one can be allowed to feel hope as long as he's alive. The man obeys and says he'll do his best to track them down. Kronos wants to leave this small country, but before he goes, he'll destroy anyone who thinks of stopping him. Now, let's go to the world where Jade became a hero, as the author wants to show us how our protagonist became who he is today. She knew Jade had always been training for his revenge in the human world. She remembered how the boy from the very beginning became who he is. He gave his absolute best in every training session and completely ignored everyone else. The only thing on his mind was being able to defeat Kronos. We'll call this girl Shella. She always tried to give him advice, but Jade's mind remained closed for a long time. He didn't want to move forward without being completely overprepared for every challenge. He remembered there's no easy path to revenge. He wouldn't let himself be weak like the day he lost his family. That's how he forged himself into the spear hero. He completed every mission with total efficiency, never leaving anything to chance. His colleagues thought Jade's fighting style was overkill. Even so, he was extremely meticulous. Jade never understood that not everything is about brute force, and he was caught off guard from behind, taking a heavy blow. However, as he looked at his enemies, he remembered his purpose. He remembered the man who took everything from him, which is why he can't give up. That was his reason for living. He wouldn't rest or fall until the day the sword hero was eliminated. So, he used all his power to destroy the cave goblins, taking out the boss with pure rage. He would destroy any enemy that stood in his way. The battle ended, and Jade was the only one left standing. The boy lies down and starts having visions. It was his family calling out for help. He knows he's turning into a monster. It's not something his family would be proud of. That same night, the boy had a talk with Shella. She wanted to know what his purpose was. Our protagonist reaffirmed that his past is haunting him. The only way he knows to free himself is by destroying Kronos. He needs to master every fighting style. When he finally gets close to him, he plans to take him apart piece by piece. Jade always dreamed of the exact moment his revenge would be complete. Shella found that disgusting. Jade knew he was twisted inside. That's how the boy quickly reached the final trial. As I said, it wasn't a problem. After waiting, he defeated his world's demon king with ease, but he knew this would never be enough. So he used an immortality potion and poured it over the demon king's helmet. Shella and the others couldn't believe their eyes. The king stood back up, never imagining that he and Jade were so much alike. Our protagonist said he couldn't go back yet. He needed to keep fighting to destroy his true target, so the king would just be his punching bag. After dying many times, the king couldn't take it anymore. He begged for his life to stop being trampled on. Shella did everything she could to stop Jade, showing her love and concern for him. She didn't want her world's hero to turn into a monster, and because of her, he remembered he was still human. He was lucky enough to end up in a world of smiths. Various spear shafts were modified for him to use. Shella did her best to help Jade in his final fight. That's where the spear hero got so many weapons and became so powerful. He still had hallucinations of Kronos, but he learned to live with them. He didn't care about being the world's savior. Taking down Kronos was enough for him. Jade returned to the ship, where Taya was waiting, looking completely shocked. This guy just took down another powerful hero. At this rate, he might actually have a chance to defeat them all, one by one. He asks if anyone survived, but the answer is no. Practically all the soldiers were wiped out by NASA's Trident. She knows they're in trouble. Without the soldiers, they can't operate the ship. She asks him if he has some trick or ability to move the vessel. This annoys Jade. It bothers him that people expect him to be like Superman. He's only prepared to take down heroes. Besides, he brought her along to handle things like this. If she can't solve these simple problems, then there's no point in her being there. She really wants to help, but she doesn't know how. Jade tells her to rest as much as she can. He's already done all the work and is exhausted, needing to recover from the battle. This makes her angry. She isn't a know-it-all, but she knows she has to try. It can't be that hard to steer a ship. Midnight soon arrived for the two of them in the middle of the ocean. Taya searched through the logs to see how she could operate the ship. She knows it'll be tough, but she wants to prove Jade wrong. Even so, she notices he isn't resting, so she goes outside to look for him. The protagonist was carrying the soldiers' bodies. He laid them out one by one and covered them as a sign of respect. He had a father who, just like them, died at sea. He apologizes for not being able to save them. It hurts him that despite his efforts, he couldn't save their lives. He hopes these men find peace in another world. Taya watched all of this and could only offer a silent prayer. The next day, dawn broke, and the two received a visitor. They don't know it yet, but their journey is about to take a sudden turn. A helicopter descended from the sky. Inside were heavily armed soldiers. We'll call this man Jaso, and he was worried. He needs to figure out the new hero's intentions. She has no idea what's going on. Jade asks if she called them on the radio, but she denies it. She has no clue who they are, thinking they might be the hero's subordinates. So the protagonist gets ready, not planning to let them catch him off guard. Jaso used a loudspeaker. He says he's from the Southern Division of the Reconstruction Government and wants them to board the helicopter. A ladder was lowered down to them. Jade asks the girl what she knows about this Reconstruction Government. She says she's never seen them, but she's heard stories of a massive group of former fighters who have joined forces to fight against Kronos. They're basically guerrillas who have managed to survive through their missions. Jade figures these people are here to recruit him, so they decide to go up and see what it's all about. The two climbed into the helicopter as best they could and took their seats. Then the aircraft took off at full speed. Taya is being very observant. She knows this could be dangerous, but if they really are from the Reconstruction Government, these people will be the ones guiding Jade from now on. Jade asks where they're headed. Jaso makes it clear that he shouldn't get the wrong idea. They're the ones asking the questions here. Taya shouts that Jade has defeated two heroes and that they can fully trust him. The soldiers were ready to fire if she didn't obey. Jaso insists this mission is more important than she can imagine. There's no us. He's only on a mission to identify what kind of hero this guy is. They don't trust anyone, so they'll do things their way. Regardless, he assures the protagonist they're being taken to the resistance base. Jade says Jaso is overconfident, forgetting that he could wipe them all out in a second if he wanted to. He finds it absurd that Jaso talks as if he's in control. Taya is scared, knowing that if the helicopter goes down, she won't survive. Jaso opens his vest, revealing a large amount of explosives. He claims that while the blast might not take Jade out, the fall certainly will. They're currently 6 kilometers above the ocean's surface. After falling, they have to swim for miles in the middle of the deep ocean. He's certain that even heroes have their limits. Tella tries to calm the protagonist down. She knows things are about to boil over and tries to convince the boy to try talking first, as violence isn't always the answer. Jaso hopes he doesn't have to detonate this bomb. He has no family left, but the war isn't over yet and there are still people to protect. Although Jade doesn't like this, he has no choice but to trust them. A while later, they arrived at the base. The center of the resistance wasn't out in the open. They were completely hidden. As the helicopter landed, Jaso was the first to step out. As you can see, Tella and the protagonist aren't allowed to see the route to the central base. A soldier congratulated him on a job well done. Jaso says this is only the beginning. First, the two must be taken to the interrogation room. He knows this could easily be a trap set by Kronos. Whatever the case, they're about to find out right now. Jaso didn't know it, but the enemy was spying on him. This was the hero Actus, and she had finally found the resistance hideout. This was the lower section of the underground complex. This is where they were holding the two. First, they had to interrogate them. Jade was restless, calculating exactly how long it would take to break free and take down these men. He wonders if this is too dangerous, and if it might be better to just escape. The boy stops and the guards notice, shouting at him to keep moving. The protagonist says he's only there because he thinks it's for the best, not because he's afraid of them. The guard raises his weapon, about to fire. But Tella tells Jade that these men are just scared. Most of these people lost their families to the heroes. It's a complicated situation for them. She then tells the men that they share common interests. There's no reason to be alarmed. She and the hero are putting their full trust in the resistance. So the protagonist keeps moving forward. He'll put up with this situation for a little longer. The two were separated. They need to interrogate Tella first. Jaso, of course, would be in charge of the interrogation. The agent says that for some reason he feels he can trust her. He just wants to know how she knows the protagonist and why she thinks he's a good man. Tella explains that Jade isn't like the other heroes. She's seen it herself. His goal is to destroy the monsters of this country. Jaso asks her to continue. She explains that Jade's main goal is to destroy Kronos. The boy holds the title of Spear Knight, just as Kronos is the Sword Knight. Tella mentions that it wasn't long ago that Jade died. After training in his own dimension, he decided to return and fight. Jaso says that makes a lot of sense, and that everything he's hearing is to be expected. He understands that Jade basically has the same goal as the Resistance. The agent has one last question. How can she trust that boy so much? And how did they end up together? She clarifies that the protagonist needed a guide and she wants revenge. She adds that they must work together to defeat Kronos, as it's their only way to survive. Jaso makes it clear he has no intention of joining forces with the hero. In fact, they don't even plan on releasing him. Something didn't add up. For better or worse, Jade is still a hero. What if he's even worse than Kronos? How can she trust a stranger so much? Besides, is it even possible for Jade to have a chance against Kronos? He can't place all his hopes in a stranger. If he manages to eliminate Kronos, what would they do next? He feels Tella is very naive and innocent. Jaso claims the Resistance has very little strength left and can't pin all their hopes on one man. It makes more sense to destroy him right now before he becomes a bigger problem. The girl is confused and starts to think it was a mistake to trust these people. 3 days passed, and poor Jade was still sitting there. They hadn't even given him a glass of water, yet his patience was admirable. He remembered what Tella told him, but he no longer feels like these people are afraid of him. It seems more like they want to starve him out. Suddenly, he heard gunshots, and someone removed his handcuffs and blindfold. It was Tella herself, along with Iron Fist, the hero of East Korea. Jade doesn't quite understand, but he doesn't like this at all. The boy wants an explanation from Tella. She says the revolution always intended to eliminate them. They always wanted them gone, but then the Iron Hero appeared and saved her. The man says that government entities are always dangerous and cannot be trusted. The girl adds that she was wrong. Jade broke free with immense strength. He calls for his spear, and he has no intention of being talked down. To him, this all seemed like a massive joke. Tella tried to stop him, saying that Iron was the one who rescued her, but the boy gripped her tightly. He reminds her that Iron and the others are absolute war criminals. He's disappointed that Tella is so easily swayed just because things got a little difficult. Iron claims he isn't that bad and that he's never harmed civilians. Our protagonist tells him to shut up. From the moment you take a human life, you deserve to die. It doesn't matter who it is. If they're a criminal, any hero must die. Then, he let go of Tella's face. He tells her to run if she wants to live, because he won't protect her anymore. He was about to deal with Iron, but Josu and his men arrived immediately, announcing that Jade had passed the test. Tella explains that this was all an act. Josu wanted to confirm Jade's loyalty, and this was the plan they came up with. The agent says this soldier looked a lot like Iron Fist, which is why he sent him here. The boy asks what would have happened if he had joined Iron. The agent assures him that everyone here would have died. There weren't just explosives under the table, there were dozens of soldiers outside ready to die. The entire floor was rigged with explosives. Basically, there was no way to escape. Josu claims that taking down a hero in exchange for 20 soldiers is a fair trade. Jade realizes that his hatred isn't unique. These people also harbor a deep resentment. However, he says he agrees with their methods. Josu says Jade has shown his true character, so they will do everything they can to help him defeat Kronos. But first, they must head down to the city's central base. This was all that remained of Korea. The country's last bastion was located here. Tella couldn't believe it. It was incredible. This city had been underground this entire time. Josu mentions that the country's last hope is found here. Over 50,000 residents are protected in this place. Additionally, rumors of a hero destroying their enemies have begun to spread. Inevitably, Jade became a beacon of hope for these people. The agent only asks the boy not to betray their trust. Our protagonist and the girl walked along, looking at all the people. Then a little girl approached them and offered him some white roses, which brought back memories for Jade. He wondered if he still had something to protect, rather than just living for revenge. They continued walking until they reached this building. Josu tells them they'll be staying here for a while, but Jade interrupts as he doesn't plan on staying long either. Tella tells him to be smart, as they can ask for more supplies and soldiers. Basically, the resistance can give them a real advantage. Josu agrees with her. He knows Jade doesn't want to involve innocent people, but everyone here is willing to help. A few hours passed. Tella finished cleaning up and saw the protagonist on the balcony, trying to clear his head. The girl noticed that Jade was eating fruit and asked why he was eating so many sweets. He mentions that sugar helps the brain think better. In short, the two began to get to know each other better. and for the first time they told each other their real names. They had inevitably become friends. Now, we go to the city's intelligence building. Josu was talking about Jade, saying his arrival would increase their chances of defeating Kronos. He had been listening to Jade and Tella's conversations and confirmed there was nothing suspicious about them. The agent mentions they've already gathered 3 heroes for their army. Everyone was happy, as they were finally starting to see a glimmer of hope in their efforts. Josu says there's still a long way to go, but they've done a good job protecting these people. Unfortunately, a loud rumbling was felt from above. Josu ran out to see what was happening. He looked up at the sky and couldn't believe his eyes. A massive crater had been opened from above, and it was clearly all of Olympus ready to deliver their divine justice. Jade is also shocked. Kronos himself had come here, and he had no intention of letting anyone live with the hope of salvation. We'll call this guy Drax, and he's like a rock star version of Dracula. There was also the hero of faith, whom we'll call Alicia, along with Luna. The hero of magic, including Iron, the hero they intended to use to deceive Jade, along with Felon the Returner. His ability is quite strange, but basically, he's the most powerful of them all, except for Kronos. Not forgetting Jackie, the hero of martial arts. In my opinion, he's the weakest of them all. And last but not least, Actus, the hero of reform, who managed to find the exact location of this base. Felon repeated Kronos' orders to them. Don't leave a single person with even a shred of hope. Actus was a living weapon, and in a second, she prepared all her heavy artillery. The machine launched a massive number of missiles at the city, destroying a large part of it in seconds. Hoso knows this is serious, as everything he knows is about to be destroyed. He returns to headquarters to give instructions, but everyone had been caught by Alicia and the power of faith. These men now believe in salvation. Alicia can take control of anyone who feels fear and loses hope. It's a very problematic ability. Hoso had to restrain them all, because under the control of Alicia, they can't help him. But it's difficult, and Hoso's place was falling apart. The agent calls the soldiers on the ground floor, but Iron Fist had already taken them out. He picks up the radio and claims that all of humanity's efforts would be useless. He was the living embodiment of justice. In another sector of the defenses, the situation isn't much different. Felon was annoyed. He had been taken out twice, but he was still immortal. At the same time, in the air defenses were completely destroyed by Drac. In 3 minutes and 17 seconds, more than 10,000 people have been completely wiped out. Now it's time for the reunion. Jade began his attack, but Jackie stepped in to protect Kronos. He activates his ancient martial arts power, and with his bare hands he completely deflected the attack. The guy deflected the weapon, but he obviously ended up getting hurt. Jade was just getting started. He came with every intention of putting an end to this destruction. Kronos doesn't recognize the boy yet, but he knows this hero is the reason people have started to feel a spark of hope. Our protagonist stood before the 3 heroes and remembered something. The villain who had wiped out his family was right here before his eyes. The one who destroyed his country and his friends. The very man who turned his life into a living hell. All the hatred and fury he had ever felt would give him the strength to destroy him without a second thought. The boy began to summon his weapons. He summoned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To put it simply, he wasn't going to hold back in any way. He would attack with all his might. Kronos felt absolutely nothing, but he summoned his sword, ready to fight. Jade started by using his wind spear, firing a powerful tornado compacted into a single strike. Even so, the powerful blow was completely deflected. The attack was incredibly powerful. Even Alicia was completely wiped out. As you can see, it was basically Kronos who deflected that attack. The other heroes had to back off as it was truly dangerous for them. Alicia recovered her body in an instant, claiming that it seemed someone interesting would finally be Lord Kronos' entertainment. Jackie told her it was better to stay back, as only Kronos could handle this. Now, with that said, the stage was set for the battle to begin. Jade attacked at full power, not giving Kronos a chance to think. He dodged the spear, but it contained an ultra-poisonous gas. He didn't expect it. This poison was extremely toxic, so he quickly dispersed it with his sword. And right then, Jade took advantage of the smokescreen to get close enough. The author tells us that at that moment, Kronos wasn't willing to fight because he thought that dying at the hands of another wretch wouldn't be so bad. However, he saw something in Jade's eyes that made him give up on defeat. Deep down, he could see how that miserable boy had a chance to save himself. Kronos understood that his death would be someone else's redemption and salvation. Someone would find happiness through his demise. He has no purpose, no way to save himself. So he wouldn't let anyone else find salvation and activated his sword. It released Eclipse energy and managed to stop Jade's onslaught. In this battle, no one would give an inch. Both colossal energies clashed, creating a massive shockwave. As the dust settled, they remained on the ground. As you can see, Jade took more damage than Kronos. The boy managed to react, thinking that it wasn't over yet. Kronos realized he was being attacked by the ultimate desire for hatred, so he summoned his goddess. He was going to take this battle seriously. Both knights would fight at full strength once and for all. The Spear Knight, reinforced with the Demon King's energy from his world, was ready, and the Sword Knight, reinforced with the energy of his goddess, was also ready. Jade was releasing a massive amount of negative energy. You could say Kronos was simply releasing pure power, free of hate or love. One thing was certain, it would be a head-to-head clash of power. Whoever could hit harder would be the winner. Both powers clashed at full strength now, but this time, neither took damage, and our protagonist took the initiative again. The boy dodged the attack and succeeded. He got very close to Kronos' neck. Using his poison-coated spear, he managed to force Kronos back. Once again, the Spear Knight did everything he could to surprise him. Everyone was watching this battle. The author tells us that after so long, they finally saw the monster being cornered. Jade was giving the people hope, and Jaso appeared again. Now with a group he managed to gather, telling everyone it was now or never. They had to do their best to distract the other heroes and hope that Jade could defeat Kronos. Their sacrifice had to be for this final battle. Unfortunately, a monster, which I honestly don't have much info on, but it was being controlled by Alicia, stood in their way. Let's go elsewhere. Iron Fist finished his task, but he knew Kronos was having trouble. However, a soldier shot him in the back. They couldn't let any other hero interfere in Jade's battle. But of course, distracting this hero for just 5 seconds would cost the soldier his life. Drax watched the battle from above, feeling a bit puzzled. It had been a long time since he'd seen his master playing with a hero. He thought about stepping in, but people in the buildings threw stones at him to distract him. So Drax took the lives of all those brave souls. Felon also intended to interfere, but the agents did everything they could to distract him, while others attacked the Actus machine. Absolutely everyone was doing their best to ensure Jade had a fair one-on-one battle against Kronos. Kronos began to show why he is the strongest, and with a single blow, he sent the protagonist flying back. The boy had no intention of giving up, so he grabbed his spear and attacked with even more power. Kronos deflected the attack with his sword. Jade vanished from the field, and Kronos stopped playing around, beginning to reinforce his defenses and reflexes. The protagonist appeared in the sky, infusing his weapon with negative and electrical energy. Believe me, Jade is the hero with the most attack techniques. Poison, lightning, energy, spirit monsters, you name it. Unfortunately, even though the attack was incredibly destructive, the boy didn't stop and charged head-on, even as his weapons began to shatter. He wanted to end this nightmare right now. He lunged forward to end his eternal agony, using a clash of energies called a powerful explosion, releasing the attack at maximum power. Kronos admitted that Jade was strong, but being strong wasn't enough to defeat him. He unlocked the full potential of his sword and unleashed an overwhelming light attack. Jade had no shield to protect himself, only his armor. Unfortunately, it was too much for him. The boy could do nothing against the blast of light and ended up losing an arm. In this era, Kronos' power simply had no rival. The knight claimed that Jade's motivation was too shallow, which was the main reason for his embarrassing defeat. Evil can never defeat evil. Jade fell to the ground, but the demonic energy he absorbed from his world wouldn't let him stay down. Meanwhile, he said that the loss of his family wasn't shallow. The destruction of his world wasn't something shallow. Nothing he had lived through was shallow. The boy released a powerful surge of negative energy. The heroes and the people were all shocked. Jade charged forward again. He still had one arm and 2 legs to fight with, but for Kronos, this battle was over. There was no point in using his light power anymore. Jade attacked, however. Kronos simply dodged him and destroyed his armor with a single right hook. He told Jade he was a lucky boy who still had a chance to be happy. Kronos landed another heavy blow. The protagonist had set aside his true power. It was as if Kronos were fighting the Demon King from the protagonist's own dimension. He shattered Jade's armor with 3 simple strikes and finished him off with a powerful kick that slammed the boy into the rubble. Kronos claimed that he himself had no purpose. There was nothing that could make him happy. The fight was over, and the protagonist couldn't do anything else. The boy asked Kronos why he was hurting these innocent people. They weren't to blame for his misfortune. Did he want to know what he had done to Kronos? The man responded violently, claiming that everyone was happier than he was. No one thought of him when he lost everything. None of them listened to him. Society is full of selfishness, and that creates monsters. Furthermore, he raised hope for everyone except himself. That's why they deserve to die. Suddenly, a shot whizzed past his face. Someone had come to interfere. It was Tella, who declared that Jade was their last hope. She wouldn't let him be taken out so easily. The protagonist told the girl to run, but Kronos let him go, stating that this hope was about to die. He was curious how her hope made her believe she could defeat him with a simple handgun. The girl said that was impossible. Her hope was to keep fighting until one day, whether it's today or in 1,000 years, someone is finally able to stop him. That is the hope that has moved all these people. They are all giving their lives just to defeat him. Now, let's check in with Josu, who has done everything possible to destroy the monster that attacked them. Unfortunately, his life is coming to an end, so he picks up the radio. He needs to make an announcement to everyone in the shelter. The speakers activate. He calls out to anyone who is listening, to everyone who is capable of fighting. There's still one last hope, and it lies in protecting Jade. Hasso tells everyone that the troops have collapsed and there are very few weapons left to protect the people. He apologizes to everyone for not being able to go on, but they are the only hope this country has left. Hasso begs them to please protect Jade with their very lives. A memory flashes through his mind, as not long ago, he had contact with another hero who wanted to protect them. He believes he did everything he could to gather the strongest, and he activates a bomb that destroys the entire intelligence base, including the monster that attacked them. It looks like the building will fall on Kronos and his team. Alicia knows Hasso destroyed the building to create a smokescreen, so she decides to handle it herself. The girl has a power similar to Makima from Chainsaw Man, using the same concept. In exchange for the lives of her blind followers and her own health, she is not only immortal, but can also create various weapons. Kronos was watching this, but now someone else was arriving to face him. It turns out the magic hero Luna was undercover in Olympus. She tells Kronos what she really thinks of him, seeing him as nothing but a wretch who deserves the worst for all the harm he's caused. She literally fired an attack of candy at the guy, as she couldn't let Jade die. She had been in contact with Hasso and went undercover to find Kronos' weaknesses, but that's useless now. Kronos was certainly having a hard time, while Luna shouted that no one has given up yet, and she will give him a second chance. Now let's check back on Jade. The boy practiced his combat style hundreds and hundreds of times, never holding anything back. He always pushed himself to the limit, which is why he often ended up completely unconscious. On many occasions he was on the verge of death. He knew the edge of death very well. That's how he built his body, the hard way, always on the brink. Despite everything, he passed every test with flying colors. Everything he did for his family, and for everything he had to do. He can't afford to lose again, because if he did, he wouldn't be able to face his family in the next life. And right then Thea was there, trying to wake him up and bring him back. Luna flew straight toward Jade. She obviously can't win against Kronos. She'll give him that second chance once they escape this place. So, she grabbed him and flew off at full speed. The boy glanced back and saw Thea left alone against Kronos. The girl tells the protagonist to put pressure on his wounds, otherwise he'll bleed out. Actus saw they were escaping. Of course he had no intention of letting Luna get away, so he activates his arsenal to bring her down. The hero attacked with everything he had at maximum power. Fortunately, Luna wasn't so easy to defeat and managed to dodge the deadly missiles. One by one, she evaded them without any trouble. One missile seemed to hit her and exploded right in her face, but she managed to protect herself. You could say her magic was quite childish, but very useful. Hiro and Jackie ran to catch Luna. The ninja with the devil mask was quite agile, but Luna still managed to dodge him, keeping him at a distance. Just then, a soldier jumped from the building. The man fell and simply watched, seeing that Jade was being carried to safety. He shouted to the boy that he must live, and then he blew himself up in Jackie's face to keep him from reaching Luna. But those weren't all the soldiers. More men jumped from the windows and managed to cling to Jackie, detonating 4 grenades at once to give the girl a moment to breathe. Hiro didn't understand why they were acting so crazy. How is this possible? People used to fear the heroes, but now they're all throwing themselves into certain death. A bus blocked Hiro's path, making him furious. All these humans were sacrificing themselves just to gain a second's advantage, so he was going to completely destroy the bus. But it turns out that this bus was just a distraction, like a smokescreen. The moment it hit the truck full of explosives, the bus driver detonated them, ensuring that Jade could continue on with his life, causing in the process a massive explosion. Thanks to all those who sacrificed themselves, Luna was able to get further and further away. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only hero who could fly, and suddenly, Drac appeared behind her, shouting that she was a filthy traitor. He cut his own hands, and using his own blood, he created a powerful bow to shoot her down. He fired 3 giant blood arrows, which Luna managed to notice. By some miracle, she dodged all the attacks. She knew escaping this place wouldn't be easy. She thought about the hole they used to get in, but Kronos seemed to have them in his sights while Alicia healed him. Luna knew that trying to exit through the top was too dangerous. Besides, Drac wouldn't stop attacking, and during the chaos, she ended up being hit by a blood arrow. Even so, Luna managed to avoid a fatal wound. She knew flying in circles would get her nowhere, but then she spotted someone giving her directions. She didn't know where they led, but she had to trust them. So, she boosted her flight power and took off at full speed, leaving the slow Drac behind. The only emergency exit left standing was an elevator that led to a hidden place far from the country. It was a safe escape route, and people were already lining up for it. A soldier gave a report to a woman, whom we'll call Sophia. As the leader currently in charge of this region, she ordered the remaining troops to protect the exit route. All the heroes were after Luna, so they had to stop them and allow the girl to escape. The soldier warned that using this elevator might prevent the other refugees from reaching the emergency route. This could lead to a riot, with everyone doing whatever they can to get out. So, for the time being, they would do their best to maintain order. The woman picked up a megaphone to make an announcement. Sophia explained that this was the last functioning elevator, so they would use it one last time for the group, and then it would be reinforced to secure Luna's entry. The people were naturally upset, arguing that there were women and children to consider. They couldn't believe it, but Sophia remained firm and realistic. It didn't matter if they got out. Without Jade, there would be no one to protect the people of this country. Everyone would die because without the protagonist, there was no hope. They only had one chance to secure the future. Not their own future, but the future of their children. Jade was the only one with a chance to defeat Kronos. He was the one who had to survive. So, it was up to each of them to decide whether to stay and fight. Then someone stepped forward. A man stepped out of the elevator and gave his spot to a young boy so he could make it onto the final trip before the heroes arrived. And it wasn't just him. Every man who was able to fight gave up his spot for the children, women, and the elderly. The elevator soon completed its trip, and now all they could do was wait for Luna to arrive. Suddenly in the sky, the girl appeared. She looked down at them, knowing all these men were there to serve as her shield. Without any trouble, she entered the elevator like a bolt of light. 3,000 men remained to fight, but between Drac, Jackie, and Iron, it was more than enough to wipe out all the soldiers in under 5 minutes. We then see where Luna and Jade ended up after leaving Korea. The girl was exhausted, completely drained, but Jade had survived. 50,000 people lost their lives just so the protagonist could escape with his life. Someone approached Luna, happy that the two had managed to escape. We'll call her Yala. Now remember that everything so far has happened in South Korea, but the rest of the world, of course they've been keeping a close eye on what's happening there. In the White House, they're discussing everything that happened at Korea's last shelter. There were over 7,000 soldiers, 200 government officials, and more than 40,000 citizens who received the message that everyone had basically been wiped out, and they were already presumed dead. The man in charge, likely the president, claims they helped Korea in every way possible, but in the end, the heroes have completely destroyed the country. Now they were looking at a panoramic photo of those responsible for all the destruction. These men weren't surprised by the existence of heroes. As it turns out, a generation of heroes had already existed in the past, so the government is well aware of these beings. This man states that they used the best technology to keep that shelter safe. There must be a hero with technology beyond anything they know. The leader of the meeting says there was something special about this attack. The spear hero of this generation appeared and opposed the sword hero, and they even had several videos of their battle. This man had his doubts, since they assumed the entire new generation of heroes was on the same side. But the leader explains that Josu, a top-level agent, sent a document with all the info, confirming there are several allied heroes, and Jade was among them. So, let's head back to our protagonist. Yala was helping Luna and the boy, needing to hide them so they could recover. Both fell completely exhausted, and Yala focused on Jade as he was the most injured. The girl planted a seed, her power being deeply connected to nature, and she makes a tree grow in seconds, literally growing at an incredible speed, wrapping around the two to begin their recovery. Luna doesn't have serious injuries but is completely exhausted, while Jade, our protagonist, definitely needs all the care he can get. The stage is set to begin. Then, green energy began to flow from the roots toward them. Jade was still conscious and asked why they were reviving him. He has no chance against Kronos. That monster is stronger than he imagined, and he couldn't protect anyone. No one deserved to die to save someone as weak as him. Then he remembers Josu, Tella, and all the men who died for him. But then Yala slapped him. She orders him not to talk like that. It wasn't that he failed to protect them, they simply chose to protect him. Jade couldn't handle the guilt. He still felt like he failed everyone. Yala also suffered from that feeling because at one point, all of her people died to protect her. Now we need to go back to the White House. The high-ranking officials were questioning what action to take against the heroes in Korea. This man states there are over 5 million Korean refugees in the US. Another says that the collapse of Korea could be dangerous for people's mental state. The president is certain there could be social conflict. This man claims that's the least of their worries. The citizens won't be the only ones scared. The United Nations could be shaken knowing that a group of 8 individuals completely destroyed an entire country. This man turns to the president, insisting the best thing is to pull this problem out by the roots and start fresh. They have to take advantage of the fact that Kronos and his followers are still in Korea. They must use the new nuclear weapon they've designed. The man on this ship was ready to receive orders. He now has the coordinates and was giving them to his teammates. This was no drill. They must destroy South Korea right now. Let's go back to the heroes in Korea. Kronos finished off the last remaining agent. Felon approached from behind, apologizing for disturbing his master. But he confirms that the clearing of the shelter was a success, and now they are waiting for orders from their leader. Alicia tells Kronos that she loves seeing him unleash his wrath. But that annoyed him. He told the girl not to pretend as they understand the reason for their actions. No one knows the deep meaning behind all of this. Felon states they've destroyed almost all of Korea and there was nothing left to destroy, so he was curious about what comes next. Kronos says that Jade survived, so there will be more people putting their hopes in him. Now, the main goal is to find and destroy him. Felon says he has no idea where he is, and the only way to draw him out would be to cause more chaos outside of Korea. Then Actus turned on a UN recording where the president talks about their nuclear weapons. Felon says they were insane, wondering how they could even think of using nukes. Actus confirms the bombs have already been sent. He detected the ship and the missiles are on their way, set to hit in 1 or 2 minutes. Actus says that if he had known about that weapon beforehand, he could have hacked it. But now there's no point in trying, and Errol shouts that it's fine. With Felon's power, they can all go back in time. Felon is happy. He says they now have a great weapon to start with. First, they have to die and then he'll turn back time. However, he needs Kronos' approval first. He wants to know if the strongest among them is willing to take on the whole world. The man says if everyone agrees, they can proceed. He doesn't want to be a hindrance. Felon says that once they return from the dead, he'll be more than happy to start destroying the world. Actus claims that hacking the ship won't be a problem if he has enough time. Alicia tells them they already have a plan, so they should just sit back and wait for the world to end. So everyone took their seats and waited for the end. The missiles didn't hit the surface. They headed straight for the shelter, and now they were about to meet their end. As the explosion appeared on the horizon, and Felon shouted to their leader that he had something to tell him. It turns out he was the one who had killed Kronos' parents. Kronos can't believe it, but just then the bombs wiped everything out. However, Felon's ability was to manipulate time, and he easily rewound everything to a few hours earlier. Believe me guys, Felon is capable of controlling more than just time. In fact, he's the anti-hero of this story. Time had been rewound, and now we're back on the ship. Actually, he only went back to the moments before the missiles were launched. And just as the crew was about to fire them, they were given the target coordinates. The Hammer of God was designed to wipe out entire cities. Not even a hero stands a chance against the power of an atomic bomb. The crew received the order and pressed the button. But this time, the missiles didn't launch. A purple energy began taking over the ship. With a 2-minute head start, Actus was able to intercept the vessel. Now, he would take control of this incredible weapon. The ship turned toward the west and launched the missiles without hesitation. At that moment, the president was giving a speech, but his agents received an alert. So they tried to get him to safety, but unfortunately, the missiles were already there, and in less than 10 seconds, Washington was completely destroyed. Actus didn't hold back at all, using his entire arsenal against the United States. However, it wasn't just Washington. Various cities around the world were destroyed, including Paris, Beijing, the capital of China, New Delhi, the capital of India, and Cairo, the capital of Egypt. Basically, on that day, the heroes truly devastated the entire world. This man watched as Washington was destroyed. He's the vice president of the United States, and now he had to step up as president. The agents tell him what happened to the White House. The president and Congress were all gone. It wasn't just the Hammer of God. Every military satellite had been hacked, which is why they didn't have time to react. Now, as president, he must take office. A few hours pass, and the man has already taken his position as the new president. 2 men arrive carrying 2 briefcases. One briefcase contained the access, location, and all information regarding the U.S. nuclear arsenal, while the other was a direct line to the reform hero of the previous generation. The president is surprised because that hero was supposed to be dangerous and had caused great destruction. But the soldiers know the truth that was hidden from the public. The reform hero was primarily responsible for ending the First and Second World Wars. Not only did they help turn the United States into a superpower, but they were also a leader in scientific discoveries. That's why it's important for the US to speak with the reform hero. Now, the author gives us an important clarification for this story. It turns out that every 100 years, a hero of each type is randomly recruited from around the world. One was needed for the Egyptian Empire, another for the ancient Chinese Empire, and we're even shown part of the process for the reform hero, who was a girl we'll call Lisa. At that time, she was still human, exhausted, and mistreated by overwork. When she passed away, she was taken to a fantasy world, and the first to greet her as her guide was a robot. The author goes on to say that only those who defeated the demon king of their respective worlds were able to return to Earth, achieving feats that are now attributed to gods. Throughout history, many heroes have become mythical figures who brought order during times of war, while others were at the forefront of human innovation. Now, Felon was talking about the problems they might face out there. By the way, after dying, everyone here loses their memories. Except for Felon, who was able to warn Actus about the Hammer of God, the ship that dropped bombs. Drac couldn't believe there were heroes outside of Korea. Alicia says it makes sense, as many ancient cultures have stories of prodigies or enlightened ones. It would make sense if those gods and enlightened beings were simply heroes like them. Iron says that's insignificant, as most of those heroes must be old men who won't be able to do anything against their rejuvenated power. Alicia tells him to shut up, as there must be long-lived heroes with many years of experience, perhaps from past generations, like Actus, who is the reform hero of the new generation. Felon congratulates them for understanding, as it's very likely that heroes from the previous generation are still alive and will stand in their way, so they must be ready for anything. Now, let's get to know the reform heroine of the previous generation. The president was already at Alicia's headquarters and was impressed because there were very important scientists in a state of rest, 100% alive. Apparently, according to this story, they weren't unique individuals, they were all machines created by Lisa. In the past, she acted as if she were each of those scientists. She's also clever and immediately guesses the president is here to ask for help on how to eliminate the heroes of this generation. The man says nothing can surprise him anymore, so he needs a plan, a well-crafted and effective plan. Lisa steps forward and kneels before the president. She claims the previous president never trusted her because she wasn't human. He thought that turning to her could create a strong dependency of the United States on her, but since the new president is asking for help, she'll do everything possible to resolve the situation. The president asks Lisa why she's doing this, as he'd been told her story and how difficult her life had been, but why is she always so willing to help them? The author then shows us images of Lisa's past when she was still partly human in the middle of the war. She remembers that the men of this nation never saw her as a monster, despite her appearance. In the middle of the war, she only received support. That's the main reason why she feels she owes so much to this nation. Now let's go elsewhere, as Lisa won't be the only hero returning to fight. From a pool of lava, a forged iron capsule is pulled out. There, the Vatican has protected the hero of the previous generation, protecting a saint from thousands of years ago. The Pope and a bishop were there, still thinking about what they were about to do. This man, Francisco, says that this situation requires the help of the last saint to visit this world, Saint Raphael, one of the first heroes of the faith. But he wouldn't be the only one. Let's go to Russia. Some soldiers were traveling through a heavy snowstorm and arrived at a small wooden cabin. They're looking for someone important to the Russians. An old man with the face of a general opens the door. The soldiers proudly salute General Ivan Pushkin. He is the Ice Age hero of the old era, and I'll tell you right now, he's one of the strongest heroes to ever exist. Now, the author shows us how the heroes of Olympus have spread across the world, causing chaos and destruction after the attack on Washington. World leaders lost their ability to coordinate, realizing that Actus possessed the hammer of God. The attacked cities were left completely uninhabitable for hundreds of years. Weeks have passed, and the world is just starting to clear the rubble. In the waters off North America, Actus was in charge of this area. With his technology, he could sense any movement near the coast. He basically destroyed everything moving in the water. In Egypt, the situation wasn't much different. Drac had created a giant monster using the blood of thousands of people, causing panic throughout the country. And in the land of the Vatican, meaning Italy, Alicia would be in charge of blinding all these believers. Anyone who lost their faith would fall into her hands. And let's not forget Cronus, who was visiting neighboring North Korea. He didn't plan on using nuclear weapons, but he would attack any enemy with everything he had. Unfortunately, in a split second, all the machines fell before his power. The Korean leader argued that a human cannot be a god. If Russia and China found out that a single hero broke through their defenses, they would be in danger of being attacked from multiple fronts. Even so, a contact told him that the Russian hero was on his way to face Cronus. He had reached a new line of defense, being completely bombarded at the same time by dozens of Korean tanks. But despite taking the heavy impacts head-on, Cronus was completely protected by his goddess, an advantage of being the Knight of the Sword. The boy summoned his sword and prepared his light attack. With literally just a single movement, Cronus was able to split mountains. No defense on Earth is enough to stop him. Another area in North Korea has been destroyed. The destructive power of this guy was impressive, so the boy continued on his way. The author tells us that Cronus didn't just destroy tanks or soldiers. Entire cities were wiped out by his sword. Buildings fell before the power of his light. Nothing stood in his way, but in the middle of all the chaos and destruction, the only being who had a real chance of stopping him appeared. Cronus had no idea who this guy was, but Ivan was annoyed because once again, a madman was setting the world on fire. Now let's look at a bit of history. The author takes us to Germany in 1943. Hitler was there, seemingly worried, as the war was being decided at that moment and his victory wasn't guaranteed. Then a soldier arrived to give him a status report. He reported that the Battle of Stalingrad was a failure. Most of the army had been completely captured. Hitler was furious because that army included elite squads, highly trained soldiers. Plus, they were being escorted by the hero of Golem, Joms, and the hero of the sword. Siegfried, Germany's most powerful squads, were in that army. He was completely disappointed. He couldn't believe there was any hero capable of stopping that army. Naturally, the author shows us this because the one who defeated the Nazis in this battle was a single man, Ivan, the hero of glaciation. Siegfried told Ivan he was a fool, using so much power to maintain a world in total chaos. He asked if they had no vision or purpose. Ivan declared that they certainly did have a vision, to end the war and send his comrades back to their families. That was his goal. Siegfried said that was to be expected, but it wasn't enough for him. Even so, Ivan took him out in a single blow, defeating the hero of the sword from the previous generation. He just wanted a world without war, and here he was, ready to keep fighting for the world he desired. Cronus asked him who he was. Ivan replied that he was simply what the world needed to stop him. Then, the hero raised his weapon, ready to attack. Before starting, Ivan wanted to ask Cronus something. Why was he doing all this? Why was he willing to destroy the world like this? Cronus gripped his weapon tightly and attacked, shouting that he didn't have that answer yet. Cronus's attack was direct, and it looked like Ivan would be hit, but Ivan claimed this war was just a teenager's tantrum, so he would put an end to this mockery right now. Cronus's attack caused a massive explosion. The boy realized that his opponent wouldn't be easy to beat at all. In an instant, Ivan had created a giant shield to protect himself from the impact. Now Cronus understood that Ivan was a mage-type fighter, strategically a nuisance for someone like him. The old man didn't plan on holding back. He attacked with all his strength, inhaling as much cold air as he could, and released that powerful wind against the ground. He wanted to completely change the battlefield. In an instant, the entire area turned into a freezing, icy night. Cronus stood his ground. I'll tell you something, his face rarely shows any emotion, so I don't even know what he's thinking. However, Ivan felt it wouldn't be as easy as he thought. Cronus didn't even blink. It was obvious that the strongest hero of the new generation was the hero of the sword. Even so, in this environment, his abilities were amplified while Cronus's energy was weakened. Ivan knew the boy had to use extra power just to keep his body temperature stable. He needed to take him out before he could adapt to his power. The old man lunged at the powerful shield and literally launched it at high speed at Cronus. Kronos noticed the icy ground was slowing him down, which caused him to get distracted and take the hit completely unprotected, slamming him against the ground. The boy made it look like he was struggling, but he wasn't really trying. Once again, the ground distracted him, and Ivan appeared above him with his turtle shield, claiming that Kronos didn't seem to value his life, so he would do him the favor of ending it. In an instant, Ivan summoned a massive bear. The beast slammed Kronos against the ice. Even though he didn't want to fight, he was still taking damage from the blows, and this bear wouldn't stop on its own until its prey was eliminated. Ivan thought this was bad. Anyone else would have already been taken out by the first strike. He knew Kronos wasn't fighting with everything he had, but he wasn't going to give him a chance to react either. He summoned powerful gulls that dove toward the boy, shattering against his armor like bullets made of ice. The bear continued its assault, but Kronos was getting bored of this. He summoned his sword, which we'll call Excalibur, even though it's not specifically stated to be that sword. The point is, the sword destroyed the bear, and Kronos reinforced his armor. Ivan was forced back by the sheer pressure of his power. The old man told himself that this definitely wouldn't be easy. The boy claimed that Ivan was just one more obstacle to overcome, so he attacked Ivan with massive force, leaving the old man in shock. Believe it or not, Ivan had literally lost his head. The man couldn't react in time to Kronos' aggressive strike. The author explains that a mage always has the advantage over a swordsman, as they can attack from a distance and play mind games. It's even worse against an experienced mage with various techniques, as it's not easy to figure out their attack pattern. Still, Kronos' resistance and innate power were so high that even an expert mage couldn't react. But Kronos had a strange feeling of unease. He felt like he missed something, like something wasn't right. For a hero who had lived over 100 years, this victory felt too simple. And then, he realized, the person he had killed was just an ice decoy, from which Ivan himself emerged as if nothing had happened, managing to pierce Kronos' heart. The old man had done it, shouting that he would never be defeated in this kind of battle by a mere rookie. Kronos tried to grab the mage to land a solid blow, but the old man yelled that he was too predictable and would now be finished. The mage created a giant ice octopus that slammed the boy into the debris with a powerful strike from the side. The old man had managed to seriously injure Kronos. Kronos thought about his wound. There was literally a stake driven through his heart. The goddess's blessing was useless here. If the fight dragged on without him tending to the wound, he might end up frozen. Ivan's arsenal was vast, thanks to his ice magic, and now he summoned a giant whale. The creature immediately lunged at the boy, but Kronos easily destroyed it with Excalibur. Even so, he wasn't doing well. The monster was starting to shiver from the cold. Ivan knew it. Little by little, Kronos' stamina would start to fade. This old man had practically infinite energy, and his attacks were incredibly strong. The whale, which had been cut in two in mid-air, turned into two furious beasts. Kronos was forced to retreat. He couldn't afford to be seriously injured again. He realized he only had 30 seconds left. After that, the blood in his body would stop circulating. So he attacked with everything he had, knowing he couldn't keep fighting for long. He split Excalibur in two. His decision to eliminate Ivan was now serious. The old man thought this was very strange. This new generation swordsman was much more powerful than those of his own time, but that wouldn't save him from his end. As he performed hundreds of summons, the man literally created a small army. Ivan had plenty of energy left, while Kronos was running out of time. This would be their final clash. The old man thought he couldn't let Kronos live, especially since he hadn't even reached his peak yet, so this was the best time to eliminate him. Kronos triggered a massive explosion. The summons seemed like butter against the boy's power. With two weapons, he was even more dangerous. Kronos was in a tight spot as enemies kept coming. Even though he destroyed them, they kept appearing. He was almost caught by surprise from behind, but despite that, he managed to break free with great force. He wouldn't let himself be intimidated. He was completely determined to end this fight. A copy of an ancient swordsman stood in his way, a summon much stronger than the others, and both engaged in a colossal clash of power. Kronos didn't make it. Ivan finally managed to hold him back until his body couldn't take anymore. The ice inside began to consume the boy. He knew it was serious. Ivan had made his winning move. Even so, he refuses to give up. He held the sword in his teeth without motivation or reason. He didn't even enjoy it, but Ivan knows the boy won't stop yet, and he's too old to hold out much longer. The old man thought he recognized the look in Kronos' eyes. It's the determination of someone who has lost everything and yet keeps running, searching for something to fill the void, looking for someone to finally recognize him. Kronos was absurdly powerful. Despite having half his body frozen, he completely wiped out the squad the old man had summoned. The author says the fear of death was starting to ignite something inside Kronos. The difficulty of this battle was bringing warmth to his cold existence. Ivan realizes this could have been much more dangerous. Luckily, he didn't wait too long, since the boy turned into a monster, so he appeared behind Kronos, certain the battle would soon be over. The old man managed to grab the boy by the back of the neck and applied absolute zero, a cold so intense that even his own ice summons froze solid. Finally, Kronos has been completely trapped. The old man finally caught his breath. He's too old to be using absolute zero, but it definitely worked. With Kronos' defeat, the war is bound to end. The old man looked up at the sky thinking about what he had done, but a fireball landed right next to him. The Russian didn't understand what was happening. As it turns out, the companions Kronos made in his own world due to a spell have managed to arrive here, ready to support their hero. We'll get back to that battle later, because the author doesn't want to ignore the other heroes. In Italy, Alicia continued to cause chaos and destruction. Fighter jets appeared at top speed. Curiously, the Italian army did everything they could to destroy this threat, but even as they launched their missiles, Alicia claimed it was immoral. All that weaponry, just to take her down when she was unarmed. It's truly a heartless world. Two men stood by her side, wanting to perform a miracle, and the missiles literally turned into petals at the cost of their lives. The soldier saw it and couldn't believe his eyes. How was that possible? He thought about attacking again, but unfortunately, he got no response from his colleagues, simply because they were all being transformed into flowers, and naturally, the planes were completely shot down. Alicia is happy with a little faith. Even horrible humanity can be turned into something beautiful. The aerial attack wasn't the only thing there to face the girl. Multiple naval ships fired missiles to destroy her. However, with the simple power of faith, Alicia turned the ships into water. From the defense center, they watched what was happening. This man claims that right now, the only thing that can save Italy is quite literally a miracle. A boy suddenly appeared by his side, claiming that miracles are possible as long as you have faith in your creator. This boy was Saint Raphael himself. The Vatican had awakened him. The man had no idea who he was, and Raphael already suspected as much. Many people have forgotten him, but he promised he would win and protect them. And literally, Saint Raphael traveled to Alicia through the screen. A pair of wings sprouted from his back, and finally the duel of faith was about to begin. Alicia says she's surprised. She never thought a saint actually existed. She was glad to know there were others like her. Raphael looked at the captured people, noting that they were all filled with fear and fearing for their lives. Then, Alicia has a memory from her teenage years, remembering that the faith in God was what was used to take advantage of her. The girl literally takes the lives of several followers and performs a rather bizarre invocation. A fallen angel appeared behind her, essentially a holy creature. This angel created a wave of energy that shot out like fire toward Raphael. Now the Battle of Saints is truly beginning. Now we're shown a bit of Alicia's backstory. It turns out the girl's mother was a believer, someone who gave her time and effort to the church. Naturally, she was involved with the church from a young age. The only thing she asked God for was to please make her mother happy. As usual, she also suffered from bullying at school. Her mother suffered from a mental disorder, so she always had to carry that burden. She never had any emotional support. Her only refuge was the church, and of course, the priest who ran the place. That man took advantage of her mother, and all the hatred and suffering she endured was because of the false faith those religious people sold. Raphael, of course, didn't plan on taking a direct hit and called upon the one who protects, the one who defends, the archangel Titaniel. The angel creates a giant shield to protect himself from the attack. In the Vatican, all the bishops and priests watch the fight. A man asks the Pope what they will do if Raphael somehow loses this battle. The Pope tells him that doubt shouldn't even cross their minds. Raphael will win no matter what. There's no reason to doubt the most important saint in their history. Saint Raphael's weapon is the faith of over 1 billion Catholics worldwide. Right now, every church and chapel has been asked to offer prayers to bless Raphael. There's no room for doubt, only time for prayer. The fire completely died down. Titaniel has successfully withstood the attack. Alice says the power gap is because Raphael has so many more believers. Now, he's going to summon another saint. This one descended from the sky playing a flute with great skill, preparing a devastating attack. Raphael addresses Alice as a false prophet, and now he wants to see what she's capable of. Literally, a meteor was hurled at the girl. The only thing she can think of is to put up a weak barrier, which offered little protection, and the devastating fire launched at her overwhelmed her ability to defend herself. Alice holds on as best she can, knowing the gap between believers and non-believers is still far too wide. She needs to make a quick move if she really wants to survive, so she takes a pawn and retreats at top speed. The girl manages to escape the deadly attack. She took a few scratches, but nothing serious. Raphael appeared in an instant, claiming that everything she does is wrong. She grabs the man and charges straight at the saint. She turns the pawn into a sword, hoping to win, but the saint is simply far more powerful, and with a simple but fast strike, Raphael takes her down, claiming Alice's faith was too weak. She fell into the ocean, but her power quickly brought her back to normal. The girl literally walked on water and built up momentum, launching herself at full power against Raphael. He charged back at her, but he's clearly much stronger than Alice. With a single punch to the face, he slammed the blonde girl into the ocean. Even though Raphael's blows were fatal, she was simply trading her life for those of the people she had safely tucked away in Korea. Every time she was taken down, one of them lost their life. Therefore, she had many lives, however they weren't infinite. So, she attacked Raphael multiple times. Even so, the result didn't change at all, and the deaths began to pile up, but she had a plan. She needed the world to see this battle. In the Vatican, the man wonders why the enemy is still standing despite all of Saint Raphael's power. It's a battle where Raphael has much more power, yet the enemy still hasn't fallen, so doubt began to creep in. Within those same believers, something malevolent grew, doubt or false faith. This turned them into non-believers. When this bishop stopped believing in Raphael, he automatically fell into Alice's hands. Fear began to spread. The bishops themselves began to fight each other, and this shift in faith was reflected in the battle. Raphael was finally injured in this dispute. The girl shouts for him to remember that feeling, the only sensation the real world leaves you with: pain. The saint took the hit head-on, and his power noticeably began to drop. As it turns out, the non-believers were starting to eliminate those who still believed. People in their homes also stopped believing. All of Italy began to descend into chaos. Raphael realized this was bad. He hadn't noticed the girl's plan from the start. Even so, he had his own power and managed to take the girl down once again. He must do everything he can to win before people stop believing in him entirely. So he summoned a saint, likely the strongest of them all. A palace gate materialized behind the boy, and Archangel Michael himself stepped out. Raphael ordered him to destroy the Antichrist. The giant unsheathed his sword at full power. The boy claimed the weapon's fire could destroy anything. Not even Alicia's regeneration could withstand the divine flames. Yet the Archangel attacked the saint. Alicia says that an angel is also a believer who has stopped believing. She lunged at the saint. She didn't plan on wasting this great opportunity. Alicia told Raphael that fear had overcome faith, and with a single strike she managed to take him down. The boy thought he lost because he had been asleep for so long. That was the reason for his defeat. The people had stopped believing even before this battle. Even so, Raphael still had something to do. The saint didn't die. He ended up in a church. He couldn't believe it, assuming this was the afterlife. But the thing was that there were people here who still believed in him, and then he understood. There were still children who hadn't forgotten him. Now, let's look at Saint Raphael's story. The boy had always been poor. He was born a few years before Jesus Christ. He mainly cared for children, since in his own life he had been abandoned. Raised among beggars, he truly suffered through abandonment and poverty. Not only that, but as expected, despite the little work he could find, people never showed mercy to those in need. Raphael wanted to escape, wanting to hide from those who had no kindness in their hearts, and right as he was running away, someone ran him over. As the boy was about to die, about to leave this cruel world, he became a hero. He knows he still has a chance to fight, as long as there are people who remember him. The saint approached the children and asked them to please join their hands and think of him. They did so, and the power of faith literally materialized. As the saying goes, faith moves mountains. Raphael took that power, thanked the children for their kindness, and promised them he would create a safe future for them. And so, the saint, using this small amount of power, had enough to return to the battle. Still, this was incredibly difficult. Alicia's pawns had increased exponentially. The woman had absorbed almost all the believers. She saw the number of wings Raphael had, and claimed that a saint without the support of his people is nothing but trash. So she sent all her pawns after him. The tables had completely turned. Despite everything, Raphael didn't plan on backing down. But that didn't change the fact that his power had diminished. He ended up getting hurt, making it a very difficult fight for him. However, the little faith he held in his hand couldn't be wasted here. He had to do whatever it took to hold out until he could reach the girl. In an instant, all the pawns disappeared, and from above, the saint he had previously summoned was aiming at him. Alicia claims she always returns what she receives, and Raphael was struck by a massive blast of fire. The narrator wondered if faith is just a number. Is faith as rigid as mathematics? According to him, the answer is no, and Raphael was determined to prove it. He survived, but he won't be able to take many more attacks. Alicia was surprised. Mathematically, her power should be far greater than Raphael's. Finally, the boy was within range. The faith he received wasn't just from that one girl. The faith within her was the accumulation of everything Raphael had cultivated for thousands of years. Those children who received bread without giving anything in return did the same as the saint when they grew up. The seed that Raphael planted among those in need, in his name and the name of all believers, became the church where the boy appeared. This was a faith that transcended time. It's a power that connects its origins with the very source of religion and faith, known as the Holy Spear. Alicia doesn't quite understand, but Raphael prepared to attack, shouting that this spear carries humanity's original faith. The girl seemed to have things under control, but she felt the power Raphael was emitting, so she was willing to sacrifice whatever was necessary to protect herself. However, something was happening to her pawns. They began to cry, likely waking up from the deep agony that had blinded them. Raphael says this faith opens anyone's eyes, and she won't be able to stop it by using people's lives. Then he fired it with all his strength. The attack was so fast and powerful that Alicia couldn't even react. And yet, despite the fatal wound, the girl gritted her teeth, claiming it was nothing. She could still trade lives to recover. But when she grabbed this weapon of faith with her hands, she felt a peace she had never known. This weapon destroyed Alicia's fears, and basically she began to lose her powers. Then she screamed that no one would ever understand her. She claimed it was Raphael's fault, that the religion he created was what destroyed her as a child. But all the other pawns stopped being afraid, and the people began to wake up. Before she lost everything, the girl went after the saint. Raphael was very weak, and Alicia swore that if she eliminated the saint, her power would return. But instead of defending himself, Raphael opened his arms in a welcoming gesture, being pierced by his own spear while managing to hug the girl. He said that from the start, all he needed to do was comfort her. Alicia wouldn't give in, refusing to believe in anyone's love. Then the boy held her, and the weapon ended up piercing them both. Alicia asked him why he had never heard her prayers. Raphael apologized and said he wished he could have heard her in the past. However, he never abandons any child. The box that had the saint locked away appeared behind them, and this battle ended with both of them being completely sealed. Now, let's head back to Silicon Valley in the United States. Lisa was there, listening to the nation's leaders. She had a plan, but not everyone agreed. Lisa proposed gathering all U.S. forces in the western part of the country and moving citizens to the central region, away from the coasts. This man pointed out that Actus was entering from the east. Were they really going to let her enter the country just like that? Lisa stated that battles aren't won by willpower alone. Actus would destroy many fleets and eliminate many soldiers if they stayed on the coast. There was no point in letting them die for nothing. To deal with a monster, they needed to build a monster. The girl was ready to face that monster, but she needed the help of soldiers and engineers, many of them to help her finish building her weapon. The president said it was a good plan, so the entire project was placed in her hands. However, he asked her for one favor. The president asked the girl not to call herself a monster. Her achievements were beyond even those of a hero. The girl thanked him, promising she wouldn't let him down. Now she needed to check the enemy's location. It seemed Actus was heading toward Los Angeles. So the girl said they had to start quickly. There were many upgrades to be made. Now the author takes us straight to Los Angeles. Drones were monitoring the whole city, looking for survivors. It was clearly Actus searching for people to eliminate. She noticed the city looked like a ghost town. Had everyone evacuated? Even so, she didn't care. She was going to destroy the place completely anyway. She prepared a plasma cannon, but at that exact moment, Lisa appeared behind Actus. The machine sensed the girl's presence and knew it was a very advanced robot. She knew it must be the hero of the old generation's reform. Lisa declared that Actus had taken the lives of millions of people around the world. Not only that, but she was still looking for more. Actus asked Lisa what she wanted. Did she want her to repent for her actions? Because that was never going to happen. Verd, another name for Alicia, replied that it's never too late to repent. She still had the chance to set her weapons aside. She asked her to rebuild the world she destroyed and help humanity with her technology. Actus thought it over. She claimed that Lisa wasn't thinking logically. Verde claims that before becoming machines, they were human, and humans are often illogical. So without resorting to violence, she asked Actus to surrender and hand over her weapons. Actus says this sounds like a joke. She'll show her which of the two is truly stronger, claiming Lisa is obsolete with technology from over 100 years ago. She says she has no chance against the new generation. She activates her weaponry, stating that talking is useless. Actus fires dozens of missiles at Lisa, resulting in a direct hit and a massive explosion. However, Lisa didn't even flinch. Her barrier was more than enough. Actus realizes this won't be as easy as she thought, as her rival possesses technology from another world. Verde explains that she has been developing her own technology for over 100 years. She didn't just sit idly by while the world evolved. In her other world, she learned many things, and those became the foundation for all her advancements. She prepared for every kind of future disaster, and now she was going to show her exactly what she brought along. A massive ship suddenly appeared behind her. It was literally a floating city, the most powerful weapon ever created by humanity. An aircraft that has been in development for 100 years. This was the culmination of humanity's scientific power. Now, the author is going to give us some backstory. It turns out Lisa was also involved in the creation of the atomic bomb. She was a key figure for the U.S. during World War II, and after much effort, the war finally came to an end. However, she believed that many lives were lost that day because they weren't prepared for the circumstances. Somehow, she knew the next generation could be consumed by the world's evil. Scientists asked how she could reach such a conclusion. The girl had no scientific proof, but since it wasn't impossible, they decided to create a weapon capable of handling such a disastrous scenario. That was how the Silicon Valley project was approved. Its development actually started even before the Manhattan Project. Day and night, this weapon was built away from the public eye. Now, let's return to the present. Lisa received word that everyone in Los Angeles has been completely evacuated. The girl is grateful for the effort. Now, it was time to uphold her end of the deal. A giant hook was fired, quickly catching Lisa and pulling her toward the ship. She is brought at high speed to the ship's command center. The aircraft's missiles were being prepped. The girl gave the order to attack, and the missiles were launched at full power. Actus realized that for 100-year-old technology, it wasn't bad at all. However, she created a plasma shield, claiming that it wouldn't be enough. A massive explosion followed, but the fight was far from over. Actus launched a devastating fire attack. Lisa saw it coming and activated the ship's shields. These were giant advanced wheels that rose into the air, and together they created a very powerful barrier, protecting the ship from the massive blast. The shield managed to completely neutralize the fire. This little guy is like Jarvis from Iron Man, providing reports on everything. In fact, I'm going to call all the machines in this story Jarvis. Lisa orders the main battery to be recharged for a high-power attack. As buildings fell, the ship revealed hidden weapons. 4 giant cannons emerged ready for action. They drew energy from the main source and fired high-powered plasma shots. Actis barely survived. Those plasma blasts were incredibly dangerous. She realized she had underestimated the girl. This ship is truly a threat. She calculated her odds of winning and concluded her only chance was a direct frontal assault. So she charged at full speed toward the massive ship. The girl knows this ship is the pinnacle of modern technology. Actis literally threw herself against the shield, needing to shatter it completely. The girl ordered the shield to be reinforced, otherwise it would fail. However, the problem is that Actis didn't come alone. She had a partner with her, none other than Iron Fist himself. Lisa was shocked. The intervention of another hero changed everything. Iron Fist had much more concentrated power. He could literally tear the shield open with his hands, and finally they managed to break through the ship's defenses. Actis moved at full speed. The city was enormous, and she needed to find the command center. Lisa realizes that she now has two heroes inside the city, and Actis. She was shifting into her weapon mode, ensuring that all this knowledge would be destroyed in a matter of seconds. She completely bombarded a large part of the city. Lisa was running out of options. Now the author wants to tell us more about Lisa's origin. This takes us back to 1908, with this scientist on the left, whom we'll call Carlos, and the man on the right, who is just the factory owner. The two of them were heading to the work area where the workers were kept. It turns out a machine was breaking down, and it was a complex issue. Carlos was an engineer, so he was there to fix it. A man arrived to give details about the broken machines, but this owner didn't understand anything. He tells them that a young girl from manufacturing had already fixed them. They were working now, and this is where Lisa was. The factory owner gets angry that a simple seamstress dared to touch his machines. He was about to strike the girl, but Carlos asks him to stop. This machine has been well repaired, so he asks to please let him speak with the girl. Lisa sat down, and Carlos offers her a hot chocolate. He told the girl that the repair was good, but the machine's efficiency dropped a bit. However, knowing she did it without the necessary tools or spare parts, it's quite impressive. He assumes she took mechanics classes, but Lisa says she has a very large family. All the money she makes working there all day is just for her family. This surprises Carlos. It meant the girl is a genius. She thanks him, but asks him not to exaggerate. However, Carlos says that if she's willing, he'll pay her much more to work with him. He's one of the best engineers in England and can teach her many things, and basically, that's how she entered the world of technology. Throughout her life, she spent many nights working. She worked so hard that she formed her own team, but one night, the workshop where they slept was set on fire. And in that tragic event, she lost her teacher. Carlos passed away happy because Lisa had learned so much, and to him, she was his greatest achievement. Sadly, on that day, her life as an engineer also came to an end. The girl returned to the factory, where she worked from then on. But unfortunately, it reached a point where the extreme overwork eventually led to her death. And since her death, she became the reform hero of her generation. Now